Alrighty, we might actually get started because we have a fair bit to get through tonight. I would like to begin opening the meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners who are the First Nations people of Australia. They are and always have been the custodians of the lands and the waters where we live. I pay respect to elders past, present and emerging, and strive to learn from their knowledge and wisdom. I would also like to take a minute for those of you that may not know. May is Domestic Violence Prevention Month, and the first Wednesday of each month is Remembrance Day for domestic violence victims. So I'd ask you to take a minute in silence, paying respects to victims who are no longer with us, including our local Madam Member, Jody Myers. Thank you, everyone.
So Jamie, I'll jump in there. Thank you everyone for coming. It's really, really great to see so many different faces from different places. Leah, Jamie and I were talking about this space, and we just wanted to touch on the fact that during the course of this initiative, people may share some sensitive personal information about lived experience, their own journeys, whatever that may be. And in order for this to be a space where people feel comfortable, it needs to be a safe space and it needs to be a confidential space. So if everyone could just remember that personal information is not to be shared outside of these meetings. And it needs to be free of judgment and criticism. You know, we're trying to all work together on this. So I think that'll make people a lot more comfortable. And I guess important for people to realise that the sharing of those personal stories can actually impact on other people as well. So being a little bit mindful of what people are sharing and keeping an eye on each other to make sure that our well-being is also doing okay. I'm going to hand back to Jamie.
So I think, Amy, I'll just do a little bit more of a welcome to everyone. We're really pleased to see so many of your faces taking part in all of this. So I just wanted to do a little bit of a check-in with everybody. Tonight's session is a jam-packed one. So we've got a lot of information about this amazing initiative that we're really proud to be a part of. There will be designated times for questions and thoughts. So we just ask that you hold those until the end, or alternatively you can pop a question in the chat and we'll be keeping an eye on that. And that's a good run into doing a quick check-in, a tech check-in. We know that not everyone is completely familiar with Zoom. So just at the bottom of your screen, if you hover over the bottom, you should be able to see some buttons that say chat. If you click on that, you should get a chat pop up on the side of your screen. And there's also a reactions button. These couple of things we'll be using throughout the night. So if you have any issues, please just shoot me a message and we'll try and help you out as much as we can. We'll also be doing some breakout rooms. So this will happen automatically, and once we've set it all up, you'll just need to click join once you're allocated to a room. Tonight you will hear from Niall Fay, CEO of Fay Fuller Foundation, Paul Creedon, CEO of Skylight, Dr. Stephen Napoli, our local Mannum GP, Amy Leckel, Director of Community Services for Mid-Murray Council, and then as well from the Mid-Murray Our Town core team, which is Leah Coleman, Amy Johnson and myself. I'll now hand over to Leah, who will be taking the MC role for tonight.
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, thank you and welcome. I'm so glad to see so many familiar faces and new faces. So a little bit of background about me. I've worked with NGOs, supported families and communities for probably over 20 years now. My background is varied. It's in disability, youth work, foster care and family support. I've got a private practice counselling in Mannum, but I also work at Arana and standby support after suicide, and very recently the Aboriginal Sobriety Group. So I'm very passionate about this region. Came to Mannum quite accidentally, packed up the family from Perth and moved over here 11 years ago, and don't plan on leaving anytime soon. So I've worked with plenty of families in this region, and I'm always in awe of the resilience, the people's coping mechanisms. It's just amazing what people go through, but what their survival mechanisms. So I'm just so excited about this opportunity. But yes, enough about me, and I'll hand over to Niall from the Faye Fuller Foundation.
Hi everyone, thanks for hosting us tonight. So my name is Niall, I am the CEO of the Faye Fuller Foundation. My last name is Faye. There is no connection to the Faye Fuller Foundation and myself from a family perspective. Don't know if that contributed to me getting the role, but there you go. I'm going to tell you a couple of minutes about where this started, what's important for us as a foundation, and where we're going from here. And I might, if I can be indulged to share my screen, I'll just pull up something very quickly. Hopefully you can all see that. Give me a thumbs up if you can, Jamie, because you're on my screen. Beautiful. Okay, so a couple of talking points. So the initiative as a whole came out of a report that was commissioned called Health Needs and Priorities in South Australia. So essentially this was a report that was done between two health organisations here in South Australia. One was looking at the health system itself in terms of it on paper, and the other was looking at it from people's experiences of the health system. And this is quite broadly, not just mental health. And then we compared the two, and what we fundamentally saw was that there was a disconnect between what the system was trying to do on paper to what people were experiencing in their real life, in their interactions with the system. And there was a couple of things that came out of that as a bit of a priority for us as the Faye Fuller Foundation. So one, we wanted to do something that was mental health focused, because what we identified in that paper was that, or in that report, mental health was an area here in South Australia that was, and I guess across Australia as well, we've seen critically underfunded, and unfortunately what we're seeing is an increasing amount of people calling upon mental health services and requiring support. What we also saw is that rural and regional South Australia was quite hard hit with regards to some of the mental health challenges that it was facing. So the system just wasn't supporting those in rural and regional South Australia. We wanted to do something that was place-based, and I guess place-based, whether that's a community or a group of communities, so to work with community itself. And I've put down there systems change was the final one, which what we fundamentally identified in that report was the system itself wasn't serving the communities. Yeah, so whether that's at the local or the state level, the system wasn't set up to achieve the support that people needed to see. And that there was a range of issues that hold some of those challenges in place. And what we wanted to do was help remove and change some of those barriers and obstacles, and thus change the system and the way that people experience that. What was that really critical though, and what's important for our town, and I'm zipping through this, is that we made a commitment to make sure this was community supporting community. So the question was asked that if supplied with resources, with agency, so control, and with a support team as well, we thought the community could fundamentally lead the charge for making the changes within the system that they needed to see. And they were best placed. So why would us in metropolitan Adelaide presume to know what fundamentally needs to change within rural and regional South Australia? So the best people placed to do that was the community themselves. And we wanted to make sure that that was whole of community as well, not just the people that spoke the loudest or the most frequently served, but we wanted this to be a community initiative which was representative of community as well, and from all different parts of the community. So that's really important to us. So when you put all those things above, so mental health focus, rural and regional South Australia focus, place-based, systems change and community focused, that's fundamentally, you get the core from what our town is. And that's what we're looking at doing and looking at achieving here, is we're going to supply a framework which is going to enable communities to support themselves moving forward. And we're going to walk alongside community as a support team to make sure that happens. And you'll hear a little bit later about where we are in terms of that journey. So the final couple of points is the fund logistics around money, which us as a funders always get asked. So we wanted to make sure that as we go through this process, or this application process, that we understood communities and that communities were putting their best foot forward. And to do so, we identified that we needed to provide some seed funding into those communities to one, leave good behind, but two, to make sure that there was better submissions for full funding as well, which is they were capturing the voices that needed to be captured. They were understanding the challenges that needed to be addressed. They understood the resources and the capabilities of communities that could be called upon. And hopefully along the way, we could help kind of build some of those resources within community. And so where we'll get to at the end of this, and I'm sure someone in the Mid-Murray team will tell you a little bit more about it as we get to this selection process at the end of this year, which is really critical for us. The final decision will be to support 3 communities here in South Australia. One of them, we made a decision that will be Kangaroo Island, following some of the things that we saw happening there from a bushfire perspective over the Christmas holiday period. But another 2 communities where we'll provide 10 years worth of funding, which will roughly be around $3 million, give or take, across that 10 years. But in addition to that, what the communities will receive is support from social innovation organisations. They're going to be provided access to measurement and evaluation. They're going to have access to other grants available through FRRR as well, which will facilitate. And hopefully we'll have access to some key decision makers within the overall SA health system. So we might be able to learn what's happening and what's being done within the communities we're working with to fundamentally change the way that a lot of South Australian rural and regional communities address some of their mental health challenges that they might be facing. So hopefully that was 5 minutes. I hope got everything in there. There's lots to do. It's a wonderful initiative, and the real strength of it is not the foundation, is not the support team, is the strength of the communities that have engaged in the process. And so I'd encourage you here, if this is your first interaction with the Our Town initiative, to get involved, have a chat to your team, because critical to your community success are you as an individual and your stories. So that's me. I'll hand back over. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Niall. What we might do now is break out into breakout rooms, where what we want to know from you guys is who you are and what actually sparked your interest in joining tonight's information session. So in a moment, you'll just get a little pop-up asking you to join a group. If you just select that, and everything will happen automatically, and we'll see you all back here in a few minutes.
We got everybody back?
I think we're still missing a couple. Yeah, there we go.
Everybody's back now.
Yeah, I think so.
So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Stephen Napoli, our local Mannum GP. I can't see you, but I hope you're there and ready. I'll try and find you on here.
Hi Lee, I'm here.
Oh, good, excellent.
Yes, yep. Look, I'd like to have some assistance if someone could with some fire. I've got some graphs to speak to in a moment, but just in general, bit of background. I have had an interest in mental health since my early days in my medical career, and I have had an opportunity to be involved in. Sorry, actually, I might not put those up yet, if that's all right. It might be a bit distracting. I'll just give a bit of an intro. Thank you. So just in regards to background in my own personal life, having opportunity to share in the journey of many families and individuals and children for 20 years in my work as a GP has been it's been humbling, and it's been inspiring. It's been challenging. There's been opportunities that have arisen to help promote a men's health discussion group in Mannum with the previous Uniting Minister, Rod Mann, who's passed away. He's a lovely man. There's opportunity to set up a youth mental health focused group in Mannum as a drop-in centre. And there's been opportunities to see the great work that's been done in various other aspects of the community through the Mary Family Connections, through the Suicide Prevention Group, spoken about City for Life. There's been lots of activities involved in the community, which has been really wonderful to see. And in my role as a GP, I do feel that the community themselves are in the best position, as Niall was referring to, in addressing what are the particular barriers or struggles, challenges, and I don't see myself as coming as some person who would somehow take any sort of role that might supersede the voice of the community. So all I'm seeing myself now in providing some statistics, it might be a little bit dry, but it's just basically to see the challenges that have arisen in our community, and people are already aware of our issues as a region. This is a graph which just speaks to Indigenous population, those who are currently listed in our medical practice. The figures are actually, they look large on the graph, but they're actually small in proportion to our population group. So we have about 2.7% listed Aboriginal, those who identify as Aboriginal Torres Strait Island background. There are 2.7% of our total population group sit in Mannum. Of that group, we can see the male-female breakup, similar, and those who are receiving mental health plans as a proportion of this particular population is 25%. Mental health plans are a way that an individual can access psychology services. So as a group, we can see there is a proportion there, quite a significant proportion, those Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people who identify have mental health concerns. So this isn't obviously representative of the total community, those who aren't attending our practice and those who may not be seeking, who maybe have unidentified mental health concerns. And the various population spread through, yeah, it is a bit small, isn't it? Thank you for enlarging. Yeah, so we've got a spread of age population between under 15, 30, 45, 65. That's a general spread across all the age, which is actually a little bit uncharacteristic for the population. You'll see in the next graph. Change it over. So I might enlarge that a little bit. So we can see here, yep, that's great. In this population group, it could be slightly moved to the left if possible. So I can start speaking Anyway, so we've got about 4,500 in our total population group attending and registered to Mannum Medical Centre. Male and female, slightly greater female proportion. Of this particular group, so this is interesting to see the data on this particular slide looks at proportion of those attending that have a diagnosis of mental health concerns. So that's saying on that particular proportion around 15% in total. So I'm just not sure this is representative of the current framework. So there's another slide that might show it a bit better, but you can see the age of the various population groups. If you flip over to the right-hand side, you can see as a proportion, our community is an older age group that are those attending the medical centre. So there's 45 to 65 age group is a larger proportion, about 20%. And I can't see the right-hand side there, but we do have a significant older group. I'm not sure if we can get into that. Right, yep, 66 and over. We can see those who can identify there. There's about 10% over 65. So we see as a proportion of our community, we have a significant number over the age of 45 and over the age of 65. Next slide, please. So I think that's similar to what I'll move to the next slide. So what we're looking at now is the figures relating to our population as a percent, looking at those who've actually currently in the last, most recent figures of last year, identifying with mental health concerns. So in this particular graph, we can see that as a general population, we have 30% identifying with mental health concerns, and the majority of those are anxiety, depression, smaller number of other illnesses such as schizophrenia, struggling with schizophrenia, or dementia as an older age group, developmental disorders, younger age group. So as a total population, about 45% of this group of mental health patients do have mental health care plans. Now, of interest, I'm not sure if it's captured in the next graph. And I'll finish off with my graphs and speak to that. Move to the next graph. In the last 8 years, if the next graph would come up, there is an increase in our mental health diagnosis in general, 20%, 30% in the last 8 years. So that sort of identifies significantly. I think that's similar to the one we just saw. Yeah. Yeah, it may not be on your available data. It's got a black ground, but that's okay. So I can speak to it. So in June 2012, we did a summary. About 19% have a mental health diagnosis. That increased in the next 3 years to 23%. 3 years after that, 28%, and most recently 30%. So we've had a significant increase in identified mental health diagnoses in the last 8 years, and I can speak to my experience speaking to the psychologist that Robin Topman's been visiting over 10 years, various therapists that will be participating in this session. There is definitely a high proportion of our community identified mental health diagnoses and struggles of some sort, and complexities around the issues facing individuals and their families, which involve overlapping drug and alcohol concerns, domestic violence, developmental delays in children, isolation, unemployment, poverty, transport difficulties, different gender-based concerns, and English as another language, and characteristics for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities as well around cultural identity. So there's many issues dealing with for families and children and members of the community with mental health concerns, which does intersect across many different parts of their world. So it really speaks to the complexities of experiences of people in rural and regional areas that our well-being as individuals, and particularly referring to mental health and well-being of our minds. Many factors that contribute to this. Thank you. Any questions?
Can I, sorry, Stephen, Paul Creedon here. A quick question if I can. You said 30% now, so that's 30% in your practice. Would you imagine that that's reflective of the general percentage in the community, or would you?
So that's a really good question, Paul, and really I can only speak to what I see, and that's the hard part about access. You would know in your role, Paul, that in the community there's large proportion that wouldn't access services, that wouldn't identify need, that would be left in many places without care and appropriate treatment and support. So as someone who works in a little bit of an ivory tower in my medical centre, I really can't speak with clarity about what's actually happening out there in the community, which is why we have this opportunity in this forum to come together in our town initiative to hear the voices of the community. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so we're going to listen to Paul Creedon, the CEO of Skylight now. Thank you, Paul, if you're ready.
Sure. And I think I'm not going to talk for an enormous amount of time. I was just asked to talk about definitions around in this area. And I guess I'm going to talk just generally because there is no right definition currently, that the communities of people with the mental illness, mental health concerns have never really come together to work out what terminology they prefer. So it tends to be terminology created by people who don't actually have that direct experience themselves. So at the one end of the continuum, we have this general catch-all phrase used by everyone, mental health. And it's unusual in this sense because we don't generally talk about health to define illness in any other area. It's only in mental health we talk about health to really talk around the issue of illness and people's concerns. At the other end of the continuum, you have a more traditional term, mental illness. Mental illness tends to be used mostly around people who, from Stephen's presentation earlier, have what might be called the pointy end, the schizophrenia, bipolar, schizoaffective disorders, bipolar affective disorders, etc. So they have a significant, severe, and ongoing issue. It may not be always florid, it may not always be very active, but it's an ongoing, significant underlying issue. And at the mental health end, when people talk about mental health, they're generally referring to people who have some sort of distress rather than illness. So we're talking about people who are going through a period of significant distress. It can be incredibly damaging if unattended to, could turn into something more significant, but it tends to be more transitory and reaction to some particular condition. Now, you may have noted, if you've got anything to do with the NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme, that they've created a whole new term, or they've borrowed a term from the World Health Organization called psychosocial disability. And that's to apply the concept of disability, which is a functional assessment. And it really does nothing but define an impact of illness rather than, it's not a reflection of intensity of illness so much as the functional impact. So I guess all I really wanted to highlight to people is that there are lots of different terms in this area. The term that I think as a community and as this particular project is probably more sensible for us to start talking about things like wellness and well-being, because they're reflective that everyone in the community has a right to be well, or as well as they can be. given their circumstances. So the concept of wellness and well-being are those concepts which are about us engaging with the community and living well with whatever conditions we have at this point in time. So I guess I'd encourage us to start thinking in that way rather than in defining it in terms of illness or disability.
Leah, can I ask a question, please?
Yes, sure.
I was just wondering whether Dr. Napoli has been aware of people that are being, or particularly men or elderly men that are coming to the medical practice now seeking help with an ailment or an illness, because we certainly have that open discussion, sometimes one-on-one in a men's shed, and we usually take it outside with a cup of tea or coffee or whatever and share someone's problem. And there's every opportunity, I guess, for us to say, well, look, you need to get checked out because I heard someone else have that similar problem and they got fixed very easily. So you have a referral process, it's pretty informal, and we're not medical doctors and or whatever, but we sit and listen to people talk, and we try and give a referral or prompt it. And blokes are a bit reluctant to do that normally. So we give them a poke with a stick and get them to go in that direction, to go and talk to some experts and just get checked out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I'd be interested to see whether Dr. Napoli has any evidence of that being worthwhile.
Thanks, Mike. Look, I would only speak from once again, my personal experience of what I see in my working life, and I can translate it to the bigger picture, but it would appear from my experience that those who have greater connectedness to their communities, their social fabric, their families, their friends, services such as you mentioned, Men's Shed, this is actually translated, I think, statistically, quote me on the actual numbers, but in improved outcomes to well-being, as Paul's referred to, well-being on an emotional level, but also on a actual physical level. The data will support what you want. That those who have connections with their peer groups, their friendship circles, their families, better care of themselves because they feel better about them. I think that's coming down to some of Paul's comments that I wholeheartedly agree with, is the idea and concept of well-being so integrated to social, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual, the cultural, and to isolate one aspect of our well-being to say this is a mental health problem or this is a physical problem. I think missing the big picture, and you've highlighted that, Mike, in that connection with another fellow human being, another male. You're actually able to share your concerns with each other in a safe space, in a respectful manner, and it encourages people to then feel better about themselves, to take care of themselves, and to seek. And that's actually a really powerful mechanism, a very powerful way of promoting the well-being of the communities, is building those relationships and that connection.
I think I've noticed since the virus has changed our life that the many phone calls that me and other committee members have fielded, it's clear that people are just breaking their neck to get back into that group and share their problems and get help and just find out what's going on. So I think it's a good environment. I just hope we get through it all. I'm pretty confident we will, and we'll be stronger from it.
Thank you, Mike. That's a really great question and exactly what our town's about, I think, in a nutshell. So now that the facilitators have collated their little bit of information from our groups, we're just going to really quickly feed back. So the things that I heard in my group were everybody's here because they're passionate about mental health, whether it's mental health of children, families, community, over 65s, everybody, the whole kit and caboodle, I suppose, of community. We had people from schools, from committees, from collaborations, all sorts of places. So it's really good to see a big mix of people. People mentioned things like the need to be proactive and not just fix things, but actually be proactive in maintaining people's mental wellbeing. And also about the real importance of including young people and Aboriginal communities in this space so that we're hearing those voices as well. So that was mine in a nutshell. So are you happy to go next?
You cut out, but I'm assuming you said Amy.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Are you happy to go next?
Sure, I'll roll with that next. So we had a really diverse range of people in my little breakout room. We had people with lived experience. We had people with lived experience themselves and also family members, which was fantastic. And for those people that are experiencing challenges themselves, it's really brave that you've come into this forum, because sometimes we can create environments where people don't always feel comfortable. So I commend you on that, firstly. We had people from men's sheds. We had local counsellor. We had people from rural and remote mental health across several different districts, which was fantastic. And yeah, so I think that in a nutshell is our group. So fantastic to see so many diverse, I guess, people in this setting.
Thank you, Amy. I'm going to hand over to Jamie to do the feedback from her little group.
So I had a nice little group of mostly people that I already knew. And one of the most interesting points that was raised in our group was a high antidepressant rate in our aged care sector within the region. And I also had a lovely co-worker of mine, Dawn Stewart, who is a classic example of what usually happens in a rural community, where someone wears many, many, many hats and that brings to the forefront that volunteer burnout is absolutely a real thing in our region, and something that we hope that we can do a bit of a workaround through the Our Town process as well. We also had Janet, who is the founder of Silent Ripples, who you will hear from a little bit later on tonight. I'll now hand over to Leah.
So, Kate, you're up next.
Oh.
Okay, to me. Okay, we had it's such a great mix of people. We had people from Nildotty right over to the other side near Gawler. We had a mix of community members who are there because they don't want their community to miss out, to the advisor to the Premier's advocate on suicide prevention. We had a local business leader. We had a number of people volunteering in suicide prevention networks, real mix. And I think all of them were already invested in improving the mental health and well-being of this community and other communities. And whoever's next,
Thank you, Kate.
That'll be me.
Over to Leah.
Thank you. Well, I had two CEOs, somebody from Victoria and Mike from the Men's Shed. So, sorry, I didn't say other names, but yes, Niall and Paul. And so it was good because we have invested interest from Skylight. They're looking to see what services that they can bring to the region as a result of this. It's sort of like, I guess, tagging on to what we come up with. So that's really good. Sal from Victoria has been involved with youth, and she's also part of the Manum Doc. So it's great that we've reached so far and wide. I absolutely love it. And that's the beauty of this initiative. What else? Yeah, I think that's probably all I've got to say. Thanks.
So we're going to jump to Amy Leckel now, who's the Director of Community Services, and she's going to talk about the initial application.
The joys of technology. I'll unmute myself and you can hear me. That will help. Thank you very much, Amy. Wonderful to be part of this platform tonight, and it's so exciting to see the diverse range that we've got in this group, and I really look forward to what this can bring to our community. So I have been asked tonight to have a discussion around why the Mid-Murray Council applied to the Faith Fuller Foundation for the Our Town grant funding. But before I go into that, I'll just give you a bit of background about myself. So I obviously am employed at the council to create opportunities for our community in a community services, I guess, platform. But I'm also a resident of this community. I live here. I have family that live here. I am involved in a lot of different volunteer, I guess, capacities and community groups. And I am extremely passionate about wellbeing. I also have not lived experience myself, but through family. So I know what it's like firsthand to sometimes not have all the supports that we need to get the outcomes that we require for our community. So why did myself and my team and council initially look at this application? And the short version of that is that you know, we see a really large opportunity, something that is very different and very unique, offered through Faith Fuller Foundation. When we look back through, I guess, community consultations, statistics, you know, Dr. Napoli's been through a lot of those already, and I'm not telling you anything new, but we looked at, you know, what were the reasons why we would apply for this. And basically, as a council, as many of you would know, we have a strategic plan which guides the, you know, 4 years of operations. So that's the technical stuff behind it. Part of that is the aim to engage with our community and activate opportunities and partnerships which provide, I guess, opportunities for connection, engagement and participation for our community. We know, or what we found throughout statistics and feedback, is that we have high suicide rates. In a small township in Mid-Murray of a population of about 200 people, we had 4 suicides in a period of just 2 years. And if that isn't enough reason to put in an application, I don't know what is. We have high levels of alcohol and drug abuse, mental illness diagnosis and prescription rates have increased. You know, in terms of the CFA index, we're ranked at 923, which means we sit in the bottom 20 percentile when it comes to socioeconomic disadvantage. So that's another strong reason that's backing the intent for this application. We previously had 1 in 3 children that were developmentally vulnerable, and through some, you know, community supports very similar to this, we've been able to improve those outcomes for young people, and now we have a result of 1 in 10. We also, you know, we know that there's a direct correlation between childhood development and mental health, so that's a really important factor. We have high rates of family violence. The list goes on, but I really wanted just to pick a few to highlight the reasons why this application was made on behalf of our community. As a council, you know, we identify in rural and remote areas that quite often we don't have the volumes of supports which our metro counterparts have. And as a council, we're always looking at ways to identify what the gaps are and then working on initiatives or you know, support mechanisms of how we can support our community to facilitate things. We know that in order to have a sustainable and healthy community, you know, we have to look after the well-being. So that was really the intent behind, I guess, why the application was made. It was made from council, but for the community. So this is a really unique opportunity and something that has never been present in Mid-Murray, as far as I'm aware. You know, quite often our, I guess, funding bodies have quite a lot of really strict and rigid requirements around them. And this is very, very different. So really appreciate Faith Fuller's you know, I guess, forethought in the way that this could be delivered, all about empowering community to do things for community. And I noticed that someone had a little question that popped up on chat, and I think it was around the alignment to the public health plan. Yes, so obviously as a state and as a council, we certainly have, I guess, a responsibility to make sure that we are delivering regional public health in the best way possible. And this certainly has a direct relation to many components of health, whether it's physical, whether it's social, whether it's emotional. There's, you know, all of those, I guess, factors that go forward toward an initiative such as this one. So I'm conscious of the time. I could talk forever about this because I'm really passionate about it. But I will hand back over to Amy Johnson and to Jamie to continue on. So thanks very much for the opportunity to chat, and really excited about this.
Thank you, Amy. So I guess I just want to do a proper little bit of introduction. So I'm Amy Johnson, as you've probably worked out. I'm currently the Family Connections Coordinator at Mid-Murray Council and part of the Our Town core team. So Mid-Murray Family Connections focus is raising developmental outcomes for children in a nutshell. And research shows us the strong correlation between family mental wellbeing and children's development. So the two kind of are going to complement each other really well, I think. I've got a background in mental health, youth work, carer support and disability, and I also have extensive experience working with Aboriginal community. I'm really excited to be part of the Our Town initiative, as I've got a passion for improving wellbeing for everyone, and having worked with carers supporting their family members, I've seen the struggle. I've seen how hard it can be for people to maintain their own well-being and also respond to the needs of the people that they love, that they're caring for. I've also got lived experience as a carer of someone with mental illness myself, so I can see it from the other side. So I look forward to the challenge. I think it's going to be fantastic, and I'm really glad to see everybody here jumping on board. So I'm going to hand over to Jamie to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I am Jamie, as you would be aware by now, Jamie Pearson. I am the Executive Assistant for Community Services within Mid-Murray Council. I originally come from New South Wales and have only been in South Australia for just under 5 years now, but love it and have no plans to move. I come with a pretty extensive 15-year local government background, as well as working directly with rural communities, especially those in drought. I've also had some experience with NGOs in a community space. I had the opportunity to work alongside some Aboriginal community with an organisation that was developing programs to address life skills following substance misuse. So it was getting those people back on track and actually learning some really useful life skills to get on with a good life. I have a really strong passion for this initiative. I have quite a lot of lived experience around mental health, domestic violence, caring for someone else that is suffering addiction. All of this has given me a lot of experience and a lot of understanding on why it's so important to maintain my own mental health, to make sure that my mental illness is kept in check. And I think that all of my experiences will hopefully add some value to the Mid-Murray Our Town journey. As part of the application process, following the actual formal written application, we were told that we were successful in going to the next round, and that's where we had a town meeting hosted by one of the project partners, TAXI, the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, and we had, in the lead up to that meeting, we actually hit the road and went out to community and heard a little bit about what they had to say. So I'm just going to share my screen and play you the video of our local community members.
Jamie, there's no volume. Is that?
Jamie, you might have to stop your share for a moment. It's a quirk of Zoom that you have to, when you share your screen, you need to check a box down the bottom as well that says to share your sound, your computer sound. It's like trips everybody up.
I'm so glad you're here, Pip.
Pip to the rescue. Well done, Pip.
Yay!
We love Pip, thank you. Sorry, Pip, where?
So you might have to go, yeah, so stop your share and then go to share your screen again, and then it'll ask you to, there's a little box.
Thank you so much. We'll try that again.
In October 2019, we visited some of our Mid-Murray communities. We talked to people about the impacts of mental health, how that's affected them, their families and the general community. One thing that really shone through is that everyone is really ready to mobilise this issue. For the past decade, mental health has affected our community immensely, and we have volunteers, community members, health professionals, educators all ready to work on this one single issue.
The sad part of it all is that we still have to be based in Murray Bridge, because it was the only place we could get support at the beginning. People that I know in Mannum or further north of Mannum, they don't come to the Silent Hills meetings because it's too far to go. If you've got someone to travel from Sudan, where we've had a number of suicides, to travel to Murray Bridge, that's over an hour drive.
We struggle with drought with the farmers. When they're struggling, they tend to not bring their children in to involve themselves in the community. I also find is a little bit of a drug issue, which we are trying to alleviate in our community. People tend to head that direction, either drugs or alcohol, if they're struggling.
Kids who are facing more trauma than ever before. They're facing second, third generation cycles of poverty.
Like parents stressing about stuff can end up going through the children, and they're worried about situations that their parents are in.
I think our isolation, lack of service in our big vast area of Mid-Murray itself is a big challenge to bring people together, keep them active.
Sort of going into their second, third year of drought, just sort of struggling financially, worried where the next load of hay and grain is coming from, and otherwise most of the blokes or families don't go out. They just sit home, they brood around.
Our farming families here have been in drought for 3 years now. Of losing their farms. We don't have many services coming to Truro at all. We have to travel to those services.
In rural areas, we face so many challenges that are not faced by our city counterparts. They have challenges around their work and parenting and life in general. We have that out here, but we also have added to it isolation, high suicide rate, a bit more of a blokey kind of culture, macho culture for men in particular. Being behind the back foot in some ways, not having services come out to you, having to chase down services, having to drive an hour to go to a decent sized supermarket.
We started because I lost my son to suicide 12 and a half years ago. Found that there were no support services with sort of seeing doctors and counsellors and people like that. You kind of get to a point where you just want to talk to somebody else who's been through the same kind of trauma.
Especially our netball club, we find kids who parents perhaps are struggling, they take a little bit of time to fit in with teamwork. But once they become part of a team, then personality changes. They become a lot more confident. They like to include themselves. They put themselves out to help in our canteen or umpiring. Manham, I feel, has really struggled in recent times to provide enough facilities for both our adults and our children. We seem to miss out a little bit by providing to a lot of the other communities.
The school is very much the centre of the community, particularly those with these libraries connected as well. So it is about being proactive and engaged in the community because, our parents and carers are the number one educators. It's the school doing the support, particularly the smaller areas. And the teachers and support staff, we're not social workers, we're not trained social workers, but we're being lent on more and more. We take it really seriously.
This school's very different from my old school. It had the resources, but it didn't push the topic. They never mentioned you could speak out about it. When I first came out here, I struggled with a lot. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know where to turn to. And talking to people helped me. I feel very supported out here. Even with a small amount of people, I feel like I can talk to anyone.
We talk to our blokes at clients a fair bit, but probably not enough. Usually pick up who's going all right and who's not. When you're on committees and all that sort of thing, plus working full time, most of my holidays are taken up. I do get away for a few days Christmas time, but this year earlier I was just struggling a little bit mid-year, so I just went away for 3 days on my own, and that was probably the best thing I ever did.
Parents now have their own mental health issues. Within a school, we're having to support parents as well as students.
Personally, I have been helped enormously by attending playgroup. I suffered from postnatal depression myself. My family are interstate, and when I was a first-time mum, it was very daunting and I was very isolated.
We've got a memorial garden in Murray Bridge. It's a really nice place where people can sit, and it's a place for reflection. It's a place where we hold a service each year so that people can remember the ones they've lost.
Encouraging people to get out, be active, because being active certainly creates better, positive mental health.
We Matter came about through a partnership decision around wellbeing, basically a 4-step initiative, engaging communities and parents, developing positive relationships. The end goal was around establishing school wellbeing programs, houses you can do it, and also on mental health intervention.
Nortnort is a conservation park in Nildotty where we help spread knowledge to any tourists in the area or any locals. So having my parents as the elders at Nortnort, it's very important for the younger generation and myself to get involved, as we can learn from them and gain the knowledge and pass it down to the further generation.
One of our strengths has been able to work with the community in our collective groups. We have Mid-Murray Family Connections, we had the Mid-Murray Suicide Support Group, we have the Mid-Murray Men's Shed, and we have Manham Community Services people, and we have a wide variety of groups across our region.
Just with the job, it's good to get around and meet the people, see how they're travelling, and especially in these last couple of years, it's been hard times, and if they ask you for a coffee, sit down and have a coffee. There's the ones that you know that are really struggling, you'll make the time, you'll sit down 15 or 20 minutes, and just try and crack a joke, tell them the positives that are going out there.
Mid-Murray Mums Facebook group, that's been a good connecting tool. I sort of see myself as a bit of a role model, and I just like to be open and communicative with people and say, look, you can talk to me about anything.
That would just make life so much easier for so many people. It would be colossal. That if people can get the right kind of support that they're looking for right from the beginning, then they're going to deal with it all a lot better.
More funding could provide our community with better equipment to encourage people to commit to their community. People tend to put their hand up a bit more if there are more resources.
It just adds to the work of those who are already working in a passionate way, but it gives it extra funding to get out to these regional isolated areas on a sustainable timeline. I have found that there are so many more parents and students who are openly talking and discussing mental health.
So our upcoming plans for Nortnort is building an interpretive centre on top of the cliff, and that would help just put in information for Nortnort. It is very important in building that relationship between Indigenous people and others.
I think it would be an amazing assistance to our community, would make our community more livable, more enjoyable for people there, would help us to activate the volunteers and give them more professional support. The more we can do to help, the better resource we are, the better resource they are, then the stronger community we have.
talking definitely does help. Even if it's not a counsellor, it's just a good friend.
Is getting service providers out here. We need bodies on ground and out to the outlining areas of Mid-Murray Council. Upskilling is huge within the schools, within the community, helping people to recognise what are the signs and symptoms.
Would strengthen what we already have in place, continue it, be able to sustain what we do, equipping community members to feel like they can stay positive mentally, but that they can help others in that way, and then in turn help the community in whatever way they choose.
I hope everyone enjoyed that. I think we're back to Jamie though, aren't we?
Sorry about that. Having a couple more technical issues. But from our town meeting with Taxi, our project partner, the things that shone through that we heard at the meeting was in many cases in our region mobilises well. People are ready to work together and form partnerships. Once someone raises an idea, our community want to help, but community-based approaches to improving wellbeing are probably not quite as well understood as we'd like. There's a lack of power given to vulnerable voices and young people. We really need to find a way to bring these voices to the table to be heard. We need to improve in connections with our local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and raise cultural awareness within the region. Our region faces significant barriers such as drought, isolation, lack of access to services, and many other barriers. Stigma is also a huge hurdle in mobilising the community's response to improving our mental health. I'll now hand over to Amy Johnson again, and she'll give you a bit of an update on what's happened since our town meeting.
Hi. So since then, since we've listened and we've heard from lots of people and the planning's begun, really what we've done is begun to form a team, which consists of Leah, Jamie and myself at this point, and hopefully lots more after tonight. We've brainstormed who we think the key players might be that can give us the support and the expertise and information that we need to move this forward. We've made connections with people, we've listened to what they think. We've worked with the wonderful support staff at Taxi, thank you Kate, in a mentoring role, I suppose, in a nutshell, to give us some guidance. We've attended the Our Town retreat. We've begun to explore family violence rates and impacts within the community. We've also started to review the Mid-Murray Family Connections accountability plan, where we intend to create some strong support links with the Our Town initiative and some more mental health focus. Then we brought everyone together tonight to raise awareness, identify support and what expertise people might be able to offer and contribute. And yeah, that's what we're hoping, that's what we're wanting from tonight, is people to jump on board and join this community. So I'm going to hand to Leah. She's going to do a little bit.
Hello again. So I'm going to just talk to why this is important for the Mid-Murray region. And I'm really grateful to Amy and her team at Council for applying for this grant. It's such a great opportunity, even though ultimately this initiative will be community-led. Right now, there was no other organisation in the region that could have achieved this for us. So council involvement is a huge positive at this stage, and I say thank you. We are in the discovery phase and finding out what is possible. We will have a community-led team backed by our council, local services, experts in a variety of fields, community organisations. The reason it's important for the whole of the Mid-Murray community to be involved is that we want to cover and bring the entire region up in mental wellbeing strategies. We want to hear from the north and the south, east and the west of the region as to what people are doing to support themselves and keep themselves sane and safe in troubled times. And I'm not just talking about COVID, I'm talking about all the droughts, you know the story. So we have community leaders that don't even realise that they're leaders. We want those people to talk to us, give us their strategies so that we might help more people formulating their own strategies. This is a strengths-based initiative. We're working on the theory that everyone is an expert in their own lives. We of course need services to contribute to the process. So we're definitely not saying, no, take your services away. We're definitely not saying that. They are invaluable, but ultimately this is about community stepping up and owning their strengths, not only to survive, but thrive. And with this initiative, we have the benefit of 6 towns or regions that share their knowledge, what they've done. Yeah, it's such a lovely initiative. So I'm now going to hand over to Kate from Taxi. She's our coach and mentor, and yeah, are you ready, Kate?
I am, and I'll be pretty quick because I know that I'm really in the way of you getting the opportunity to talk about how you might like to be involved or what you want to know more about. So I work for the Australian Centre for Social Innovation. So the name says some of it. We work with communities and organisations to put people at the heart of big change making. And we set out to do that in a way that allows new ways of working together. That's part of the innovation. And my role and others with me are supporting, I'm going to share my screen and just show you the journey we'll go on together, are supporting leadership teams emerging in the 6 places that our town is establishing itself. And really my job is to do everything I can to make sure that by the end of the year, community members in the Mid-Murray have put together the best possible plan for improving mental health in their community, and that they've got the best possible opportunity of being one of the 3 communities chosen. So it's a bit of a privilege to be around, and I just thought this screen would be useful just to give you a sense of the journey we're on. So if you're considering getting involved, I know that Amy, Leah and Jamie will talk to you a bit about what that might mean, but essentially we're on a journey where rather than going straight to what needs to change right now, because often we think quite small based on the limitations of what we've had available to us, we're actually suggesting that people take the time to really look at what the evidence says, what the data says. So Dr. Napoli's talked about the data. We'll look at what good literature, what happens elsewhere and what we can learn from others, and also take the time to really listen to community and across the whole community. And then finally develop a plan. So that's my job, is to be alongside and support. We do that by coaching those people that are stepping into leadership around this, but we're also hosting really interesting stuff with some thought and practice leaders. So we'd hope in the next couple of weeks to have one of the mental health commissioners and leaders of a couple of peak bodies talking about what they've seen work elsewhere. And we're doing really simple little videos about setting up your leadership team, looking at data and literature, things that anyone can access and that could be shared with anyone who wants to get involved. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, and that's why I'm here, and that's why it's such a privilege to be with people like you who are stepping in to new ways of caring about your community.
Thank you, Kate. I'm going to hand over to Janet now, if you're ready, Janet. Janet's the founder of Silent Ripples. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. I don't have a presentation to share with you because I just haven't had time to do that. So I'm just going to talk to some notes that I have. I'd like to firstly sort of say that, yes, I'm one of the founders. The other person is Trevor, who's here, Trevor Smith. And without him as well, we wouldn't have Silent Ripples. So I'd like to make sure that he's acknowledged in that. We formed in January 2010, and as you saw in part of the video, the reason we formed was because I lost my son in 2007. By the time I got to 2009, I was still searching for some answers. I'll be quite honest, I'm still searching for those answers in some respect. But what I really needed was to speak to somebody else, and the only way to do that was to form a group, because there was no other way to do that and still remain local. So we formed the group in Murray Bridge, where the sport was. Our group is actually run primarily by about 6 to 8 of us that manage the administration of the group. We've got another 10 or so members that meet in Murray Bridge, also in the Riverland now, and hundreds more on our Facebook page. I did look it up, and it's quite staggering the number that have followers that we have on Facebook, and also on the web page that Trevor and his partner look after for us. So we have quite a wide reach of people. And I'm going to run through some of the things we've done in 10 years, because we've just celebrated our 10 years, and then I'll explain very quickly how we've done it. But after the group formed, one of the first things we did was we attended the Murray Bridge Mental Health Expo, and I'm just going to list these. I'm not going to go into any detail, so yeah, make it quickly. And we attend that Mental Health Expo every year. We've been there at a presence. We became incorporated and we registered a charity, and we've also registered or trademarked our name, and we felt that was extremely important to do so that we had our own independence from anybody else. We didn't want to be auspiced by one of the other community organisations, because that would mean that we would have to be working under their guidelines, which we didn't want to do. We've supported one of our members on a horse ride. She was rode from Kapunda to Wollonga on the Kidman Trail, and she did this in honour of her father and her brother, who both died by suicide, and she did that by herself, which was pretty extraordinary, really. We were part of the South Australian Suicide Prevention Strategy. I was part of those first meetings when that was first being written up. And so we had a presence of people being bereaved through suicide being included in that strategy, which was the first that had been spoken of. We've organised and run Living Hope workshops. We've been a part of Are You OK Day since the 2nd year of its inception. We get out each year and talk to people on that day. We started a movement to lay wreaths on Anzac Day and Remembrance Days at all the RSLs. So we have both city and country RSLs, and now has moved into Victoria. And that's to recognise and remember members who have suicided and members who suffer from PTSD, are part of our armed services. We've established a memorial garden in Murray Bridge where we hold our Remembrance Day service, and this is now being replicated in Waikerie if we can get past the coronavirus issues that we're having at the moment. I'm on the steering committee for Standby Response, and I've been with that since the beginning. We're also on the committees for the Mid-Murray and the Murray Bridge Suicide Prevention Networks, and Trevor's actually the chair of that at the moment. I'm not sure if he knows how he got to that, but anyway, he's there. We provide support to Ski for Life since the beginning, which is a big ski ride which goes from Murray Bridge through to Renmark each year in March. We've held a walk through the darkness. We've started a motorbike ride, which is 190 kilometres, with 300 odd motorbikes riding from Mannum up to the Barossa to Two Wells and into the Royal Show. when they culminate at the ride and at the Royal Show, there's 40-odd thousand people that actually get to see that event, and obviously raises a huge amount of awareness with suicide. We've now got sister groups, as I was saying, in Loxton and in Waikerie. So there's 3 of us. We provided support also to another group in the Adelaide Hills called Wind Fallen. I do that basically through Facebook and support those people. In 2018, I became a member of the Premier's Council for Suicide Prevention in South Australia, which is the first council of that type, and very proud to be a member of that group. We also run fundraising days at Bunnings Sausage Sizzle, which gives us an opportunity to actually still talk about suicide and raise awareness about our support that we offer to people. And I guess all of this has been, in all of this, what we're doing is we're raising awareness about suicide and suicide prevention and the impact that suicide has on families, which is the main thing that we're trying to do. So I guess, the other thing I might quickly mention is we actually now will have, once the COVID restrictions are off, we'll have our own space in Mystical Flair, which is a little cafe in the main street in Murray Bridge. And we're going to have our own space there to have our own meetings and also work as a bit of a drop-in centre. But that all started to form as the COVID virus came in. And so it sort of got squashed before it can really get started. But we'll get there. We know we'll get there. And so, yeah, so it's a lot of things that we've done in 10 years. And considering it's a small group. But how have we done it? We've done it because... well, we've done it by getting out there and actually being there. So being there on Are You OK Day, being there at the Mental Health Expos, continually talking about what we can provide, the support we can provide, not being embarrassed or ashamed to mention the word suicide, not be embarrassed to talk about the life experiences that we've all had and how difficult life can be for us, because that once you start those conversations with people, then it acknowledges those other people's feelings, and it gives them the opportunity to sit there and respond to you, and they feel safe that they can actually talk to you because you understand what they've gone through. So we're always out there doing something like that. We've had wonderful support through the Murray Valley Standard, which I'm very sad that to hear that has been closed, that office has been closed. But Perry, who has started up a online newspaper, is going to continue to support us, and we've already committed to subscribe to his online paper. They've given us a wonderful support over the 10 years, the Standard local paper. We're getting the same kind of support in the Riverland papers, and we just make sure that everything we do, we go to the paper, we advertise, we let people know what we're doing, even if it is only the Are You OK Day. We're going to be there out front of Woolies or out front of the Westpac, and we're going to be, talking to people. And we let them know and we publicise it afterwards as well. So we do as much as we can with publicity that we've got, because there's not a lot in the Mid-Murray area. So we've got to use what we've got. We do have a big Facebook presence. We have a lot of people, as I've said before, on that, and that helps also spread messages. We worked strongly with our volunteers. And they extend beyond the 6 or 8. When we actually want to do something, all of a sudden other people turn up to help us do things. So things like our Memorial Day, we'll have other people who don't come to the meetings who'll sit and say, yep, how can I come and help you today to help set things up or help, run things. And some of those volunteers, we've got some really good partnerships with things like the local governments. The Murray Bridge local government's been an excellent partner, and I know that the Mid-Murray Council is desperately wanting to help us as well, to set something up in this council region. We just have to work out how that's going to look. We've also had some great support from businesses such as Westpac and Duttons, and the community groups such as Rotary, Lions and CWA. They've all been fabulous, and Standby, of course, and the 2 networks have also supported us very strongly. So yeah, I guess that's how we've done it, is just by being there, by not being afraid to sort of step forward and say stuff. I think if the group wants to get something done, if you don't have the people or the volunteers to help you do it, but you've got resources in other ways, then share those resources with groups that can do it, because there are people who can do it. There are other groups that can do stuff if you've got ideas for it. And I just want to finish by saying, you know, that suicide does destroy families and friendships. It happens 8 times a day in Australia. For every suicide, there's an estimated 35 people that are affected by that one loss. So over 3,000 people took their own lives in 2017 across Australia. That's the equivalent population of Mannum and its surrounding areas. And if you actually sit there and you think about the entire population of the Mannum district all dying by suicide, that's a shocking thought when you put it into that context. And so we do need to do something about it, because, you know, 1 in every 2 people think about suicide. They may not think to the extent of taking an action, but 1 in 2 people think about it. It crosses their mind. We need to stop that. We need to make sure that we don't have that kind of thing happening anymore. We need to improve the conditions for people. We need to find those mental health things, those mental well-being things that we need, so that people, you know, can reach out, can get help when they need it. And I'm just really looking forward to perhaps getting something out of this funding and this program that will help us do that in the Mid-Murray area, because I can see that it's desperately needed. It's just a difficult region to kind of have to work in, because it's such a long, stretched out kind of region. You know, it's quite a disconnected communities across the region from north to south.
Janet, I'm aware that we're sort of running out of time.
That's it.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's all such important stuff for sure. And yeah, really appreciate it. Thank you. Has anyone got any questions of Janet?
I have, if you don't mind, not so much a question as a statement of support, Janet, that the work of your organisation and other organisations like yours are the very foundation of good community responses. And what you do is you raise issues that most suicide is actually not people who are diagnosed with a mental illness. It's not people who have been through the mental health system. It's people who have lost contact with with wellness. They've lost hope in a lot of ways. And so I think you're spot on. It's about connecting people, the community generally, with the things that make them well. It's not about responding from a mental illness perspective so much as a wellness perspective.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Oh, sorry, Leah.
No, you go.
Can I perhaps just raise a couple of things? Janet, you didn't mention the annual Ride Against Suicide.
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yes, I did. 190 kilometres.
Sorry, when you said bike ride, I'm thinking pedal bikes, not motorbikes.
Motorbikes, no, motorbikes, not pedal bikes, motorbikes.
That's my bad. It's been a long day. I just wanted to perhaps comment on a couple of things. In terms of Paul raising wellbeing and wellness, that aligns beautifully with policy and governance and where that is actually heading. We're actually we've seen the establishment of Wellbeing SA, which is actually taking away the, I guess it's separating the preventative health and wellbeing into a detached unit away from the medical side of SA Health. So this fits beautifully, and you're right, Paul, in that's actually been identified and is being worked on. Wellbeing SA is only newly established, so it's a work in progress. But I just wanted to perhaps draw everyone's attention to going forward and working on this project, you know, and thank everyone for their passion and their motivation in being involved. And I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the Life in Mind National Communications Charter. So if you have an opportunity, jump on the Life in Mind website. You'll see there a National Communications Charter, which asks people, you don't have to sign up to it. You can if you wish to. Organisations can sign up to it. You can put your logos up there. But what it does is it enacts 8 core principles around things like safe use in language when talking about mental health and suicide. And it gives you examples of safe use in language and what they are, how to engage with communities when talking about mental health and suicide. So I would encourage everyone to actually have a little bit of a look around that. South Australia have sort of been leading the way in that, in terms of the National Communications Charter, in that all of our Premiers' Council have signed it, the Premiers signed it, the Premiers' Advocates signed it, the Minister of Health signed it. So we're actually on the forefront of making sure that that safe use in language and that safety around talking about mental health and suicide prevention is embedded at all levels in all conversations, from communities right through to top leaders in the state.
Thank you, Karen. That's some really good points from everybody. Thank you, Janet, too, for your presentation. So we're going to jump into our last sort of breakout rooms in just a minute. But we just wanted to show you, we've done a little bit of a key players map, for want of a better word, which Jamie's going to share in a minute. So we've put, you know, lots and lots of different things, and we've also put lots of question marks so that we're hoping people will identify other key players that can be a part of this initiative. Now it's time to plan how we're going to move holistically on this moving forward. And with all the information you've had tonight, and there's been a lot, I recognise that. But in the last breakout room, we're just inviting you to just think about whether you'd like to be involved, how you might like to be involved, whether you have any time to commit, and how maybe it would move forward. So we're not looking for commitment right now. We're just sort of putting those questions out there so people can think about it. And we'll have about 8 minutes in the breakout room, and Pip will send us there any minute now.
Are we all back, Pip?
I think we are, Leah.
Thank you.
So
Jamie,
I'm going to feedback what was said in our groups just a little bit, and we'll do it in the same order as before. So my group, people were pretty keen to be involved. Some people were looking for a little bit more information, and one lady is going to go back and sort of talk to her committee about the information that she's learned today. So I think we've made a pretty good start. I think people are feeling pretty excited and on board, and everybody's saying the same things, you know, about the need for young people, for older people. One point that John raised, which was really great, is about if we could have a representative from all of those different key player bubbles on that core team to actually have a really varied and diverse approach. So that was my group. And now Amy Leckel, I can't see you. Oh, there you are. Would you do your group next?
I'm here and I'm ready. So our group showed their passion and their willingness to want to be involved moving forward, which was excellent. And there was some discussion around, you know, moving forward, that, or first of all, actually, I should say, there was a bit of a sense of overwhelmed feeling around a lot of information tonight, which I think is a very valuable point. And, you know, I guess part of that is this is step one to a lot of steps. So, but that the group were feeling that some things moving forward that would need to be, I guess, considered would be the geographical area, and that not everybody can drive from, you know, to meet in a group or whatever it might be. So looking at creative ways. And I think tonight's a really good example of how, you know, we've brought together 30 odd people and no one's had to leave their living room or kitchens. So that's one bonus. And that there was some conversation around communication and the need to make sure that the communication happens through the right streams and it hits the right people, I guess. So some really, really positive, I guess, outlooks from the people in this team, which is exciting.
Thank you, Amy. I'm going to hand over to Jamie to give her feedback from her group.
So my group was very much made up of people that have been involved for majority of the process, and they were all really keen to be involved. We heard that some people are really motivated, but they're not too sure where they fit or where they can help, but would love to help anyway. We heard that some aren't the kind of people that come up with big ideas, but some are, and that's when they do come up with those big ideas, not too sure how they're going to pull them off, but with lots of love and support from their volunteers, they manage it anyway. We heard a bit more about focusing in on our aged care sector, and that's probably a really pertinent point for Mid-Murray, with the majority of our demographics and the median age bracket being over 55. So that's something that we really need to consider in the process. We also talked about the importance of engaging the youth and ensuring that youth have a space to have positive wellbeing as well.
Thank you, Jamie. Kate.
I just love the fact that one group talked about people with big ideas and people who didn't do big ideas, and that's kind of perfect to have groups like that, because you want people who are going, is that really going to work? Like, anyhow, so our group was really interesting. We had 2 people who were offering to play advice roles into it, and active advice. So Dr. Stephen Napoli and also Karen, who's got a statewide and national perspective, and has access to all sorts of relationships in both places. But we also had community members, Nat and Marty, and Nat asked a great question, like, what sort of commitment would we have to make? And I gave some really dodgy answers, given my role is coach rather than decision maker. But, you know, if you're in close and you're wanting to be actively involved in planning, this is what I said so that others can correct it later. You'll likely be working with Jamie and Amy and Leah like every week, and you'd be probably seeing me every week or 2. But you might want to be close, but not that close. And that might mean that you've got some stuff you'd like to offer and be looped in on a monthly basis and providing advice and ideas or connections to community. So someone like Marty, who's at the other end of the council area, could be the local community representative of our town and hosting coffee afternoons and getting people's ideas. So we kind of talked about that as an option. So now you can correct Jamie, Amy and Leah from into the future. So we had a good mix. We had a great mix, actually, the perfect systems mix.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate. Right, Leah, I've lost you on the screen. Everyone keeps moving around. There you are.
No, yes, it is a bit like that. Yes, so our group was good. We talked about how it's an organic process, and Kate just answered beautifully what you might think about committing. We talked about the fact that at the end of the year, we're going to give 2 plans, one where we get the money, one where we don't get the money, so that all of this is still beneficial regardless of the outcome. And so my group had a lot of information that they could provide, not necessarily time, but a valuable resource and absolutely what we need. So yes, and I was the last one to give feedback, so we are wrapping up, and I really appreciate that this has gone on longer than we thought it would, but it's just been brilliant from my perspective anyway, so I thank you all. So how are we going to follow up? This is what I'm going to talk about now. But if you're interested in further information, and we're planning another community meeting because we appreciate Wednesday is not available for everybody, pop your name and email in the chat. And if you are having problems finding that, just ask. But yes, that would be great, so that we don't have to go back through all the other information. If you can just give us your name and email now. We will stay online, Amy, Jamie and myself. If anyone has any further questions, we would love to stick around for a little while and talk to you some more. At the moment, we've got a meeting booked for the 18th of May, 5:30 to 6:30. And that's where we'll plan with, hoping that we'll plan to build our working team. Sorry, I couldn't get that one out. So the next steps will be guided by the feedback and interest shown in this session. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We're so happy to have done this, and thank you to everyone that stuck around. And it's also going to be shared on the Facebook page. So if anyone missed out that you think would love to join us, we'd love to share that link with them. So thank you. I don't know if anyone else has got anything left to say. Amy, Jamie, just quickly, given that we're
just thank you everyone for coming, and it's really great to see that everybody's got this common agenda in whatever form it is. So please put your names in the comments, or flick Jamie an email if you run out of time. However, we'll make it work. So if you've got any questions, hang around and we'll be here to answer them.
Thanks so much for joining, everybody. It's and thank you for your patience with our technology challenges that we're facing.
Oh, and thank you to the speakers too.
Yes, sorry.
I said that earlier. So thank you so much. And Kate and Pip for your support with facilitation rooms too.
Yes, thank you, Pip.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well done, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Nice to see you again, Kate. Take care. Bye.
Bye.